Okay, brilliant. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Matt Sloan from the User Insights Lab at the Clean Cooking Alliance, and I'll be hosting today's session. So, a quick word on the User Insights Lab for those on the call that have not heard of us before. We're a team within the Clean Cooking Alliance that helps clean cooking organizations tackle the market challenges that stand in the way of universal access to clean cooking and sustained use. We bring together consumer insights, behavioral science, and design to help enterprises, nonprofits, and governments deliver more value for their customers. And there's just a little bit more on that slide about what we do. So, on the subject of customer experience and customer centricity, which is the topic for today's webinar, we observe that many operators in the clean cooking sector gather feedback at some point, which is great to see. Some act on that feedback in a structured way, and as a result, are more intentional about the future experience they deliver to customers. And then a subset of those also measure whether the changes that they decided to make when they were being more intentional, whether they works, or if not, whether to take additional steps. And today we're going to hear from a company who have done all three. So here's what I've got planned for you for the next hour. I'll introduce MGAS and tell you a bit more about their business and the team from MGAS joining us today. Then Anita and Kamonya from MGAS will walk you through the process that they went through, what they built, and share some of the outcomes. Next, I will show you the Customer Experience Toolkit, which is a tool that we have developed and is basically a practical workbook that is built for clean cooking operators. So I will have that open. I'll take you through some of the examples, and then we will put a link to it in the chat, and you will be able to access it, download it yourself. And then finally, we will go through a Q&A. So please, if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat, and Catherine, my colleague, will cover the questions later on towards the end of the call. Okay, brilliant. So without much ado, let's meet MGAS. So who are MGAS? Well, MGAS is a pay-as-you-go LPG provider based in Kenya and Tanzania. MGAS enables customers to top up in small amounts using M-Pesa, and a smart meter on every cylinder tracks consumption in real time. It's a model that lowers the barrier to clean cooking compared with the large upfront costs of a traditional LPG cylinder. So it's really, really good at widening the access to LPG. The Clean Cooking Alliance chose to work with MGAS in this customer centricity program for three reasons. MGAS already had the technology in place to track customer behavior, and this is specifically the usage of the LPG. They also have control over most of the customer journey, which is really important in a program like this. And so that's from sign on right at the start, right through to ongoing use, and then disconnection if people decide to leave. And thirdly, and I would say critically, their leadership were genuinely committed to improving how customers were served. So I will now just tell you a little bit about what we've actually done. Over 18 months, we followed a structured process with customer centricity at its core. And when I say customer centricity, I would really like you to think of being very intentional about the customer experience, being very intentional about what is being delivered to customers, because an experience is being delivered, whether you choose to be intentional or not, and actually being intentional leads to making choices about what you will do and what you won't do. Anyway, back to the process. So in the first stage, we actually did an audit. So this was working with an external partner, and the goal here was actually just to understand the experience today, understand the gaps in the experience, and crucially, the opportunities. We interviewed the MGAS exec, and this was a series of in-depth one-to-one interviews, predominantly phone calls. And that was really interesting, getting the different perspectives, getting the different points of view on what they felt the customer experience was today and opportunities for improvement, and ultimately anything they could say around a future vision. We, as part of that upfront audit, conducted a maturity audit as well. So this was essentially looking at the MGAS business, looking at some of the responses in those exec interviews, and placing MGAS on a continuum in terms of how ultimately how mature they were in terms of kind of customer experience development. So that was really helpful because that gave a really great foundation for the second phase. And in the second phase, we actually spoke to customers. So the MGAS team will tell you much more about this, but essentially here we were trying to understand what matters most to MGAS's customers. And this is a really foundational part of the methodology and the approach. We used qualitative research, which was focus groups with customers, and then we backed that up with some quantitative research. Um, and ultimately, we took that information and then shared that back with the MGAS exec team. And as I say, we will cover that in a second, but this was a really interesting exercise because um, we told them some things that they knew already, and we told them some very new things. And I think that's always important with research, that if the research comes back and it's wildly different to what everybody in a senior room thinks, then that's not always a good sign. That sometimes can be a challenge, but actually having some things that resonated and some new things, I think was a really, really great platform to then move into the third phase. And the third phase was ultimately about making choices. So in the research, we discovered and surfaced a whole range of opportunities or interesting areas that MGAS could have focused on. And phase three was ultimately about saying, no, we will pick these two areas. We will pick two domains to focus on. And as I've put on the slide, we will then build blueprints, which is essentially going into a lot more detail of how you would actually bring that to life in the MGAS business. What would you actually do in terms of an initiative? So it's great having the definition, but what does that actually mean day to day for people in MGAS? And so this was great because this was very, very collaborative. This involved MGAS colleagues from right across the business who were part of two working groups. And as I've put on the slide, this took place across a period of 3 months. And so it's really interesting just observing and being part of and seeing the teams change and I guess really get focused on that mission of what they were working towards and the two work streams. So yeah, that was a bit of an overview of what we did. And I've done my best to not steal the thunder of the two people who I'm just about to introduce. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Anita Tete, who is the divisional head of customer experience at MGAS, and Kamanya Irani, who is the senior manager marketing brands and insights, both of which worked on this program. And yeah, over to the two of you to take everybody through what MGAS did and your own involvement and everything that you achieved.
Thank you so much, Matt. Yes, I think I'll take the first step, which is the insights into the process, which is where the department I work under was really influential. If we could go to the next slide. Yes, so the first thing, as Matt has just alluded to, is that we did a lot of qualitative research with our own internal teams, from leadership to teams that are client facing, to just figure out what do they think about customer centricity and the service that we give our customers. And it was very clear that we had buy-in all the way from leadership to every staff that we spoke to, that we needed to improve things, which was a good place to start. And so the second thing that we did is go to our customers to identify what are the expectations they have of our service across the journey, across the customer journey. And what we did is we had focus groups with customers within the Nairobi region, because majority of our customers actually are in Nairobi and its environs. So we did an urban, very urban group where we serve in one of the low-income home estates in Nairobi. And we also did a more rural setup, but nearer to Nairobi, so that we could get really differentiated views. And eventually, all this gave us some direction of where we needed to look into. It was more about our affordability and accessibility, and how we communicate our cost, how we talk to them about cost, how confident are they about our products, and how do we communicate that to them as well. And of course, customer service and support. Now, out of this qualitative study, on the next slide, out of this qualitative study, we identified 26 customer expectations across the journey because we wanted, what do you expect out of just getting to know us, which was the understanding stage. Then when you become acquainted to us, or when you're being onboarded to us, which was the registration. Then when you're using us, which is now the consumption. When you want support, which is the troubleshooting. And then at the end, how would you want the company to continually communicate to you? So these 5 stages were important to us, and there were certain expectations that were divided into the entire journey. And so we had to measure what actual expectations can make a big impact. So we needed quantitative validation to be able to get this. So we did computer aided personal interviews. So we actually went to the homes of our customers and did interviews with them to figure out of these 26 expectations, which one would have the biggest impact, which one would move the needle the most, where they would feel that we were actioning what they were telling us. And so on the next slide, out of the 26, we identify two very clear directions of where would have the biggest impact for our customers. The first one was something about affordability and pricing, which was they want to cook clean, but we were not clearly communicating how we are aiding them affordably. Yet we are truly providing them a very affordable way to cook, but they were just not understanding our pricing well, and we needed to be able to do that. And the second one was they wanted us to be responsive to their problems. They wanted us to show that we were being responsive and quick whenever they needed support. And so two teams were established, two cross-functional teams were established within MGAS. One to tackle the first one, which was cook clean for whatever is in your wallet, and what are the things that we'll put in place, the initiatives that we'll put in place to be able to answer to that. And the second team was to be able to be the support team. And I will take you through what we did under affordability, and Anita, my colleague, will take you through what we did to ensure fast and expert support. I think I'll pause there for a moment before I go. Is that okay, Matt? Or I can continue?
You can continue unless if there's any questions, then we can pause for any questions in the chat. But otherwise, yeah, I think that seems like a great point to continue with.
Yes. So we, through these cross-functional teams and with a lot of support from CSA, what we were able to do is we were able to come up with initiatives and measure this initiative over the period of the project. So it was just not something that we are doing on paper. It was projects that we were actually highlighting and tracking how well each of these projects are. So the four that I want to highlight as the four that really aided us in terms of how to really create impact on affordability and accessibility to our customers. The first one is an innovations product that was led by the unit that was in charge of actioning that cooking clean for whatever is in my wallet. And we came up with MGAS minutes as a product within MGAS. The way that our customers cook at the moment is that they prepay onto a smart meter. Once they prepay, they're able to cook for whatever payment they've made. But we were not moving the needle enough for one, them being able to transition certain meals to clean cooking, and also for them to be able to use LPG across different meals. So what MGAS minutes came to solve was that they could buy a bundle and they could be able to cook better meals or more meals on the bundle that they purchase. So we came up with the product MGAS minutes, where you would purchase a bundle of 70 minutes. So you would cook for 70 minutes for just Kenya shillings 49 shillings, which is just below 50, which is a sweet spot for most low income products in Kenya. So because of this, it really drove full day cooking among our customers. And it's a product that we're very proud of, and it's something that we want to continue to expand to the whole customer base that we have at MGAS. The second one is we segmented between the residential customer and the commercial customer, because before this initiative they were all bundled, they were just MGAS customers, but we segmented commercial customers to be treated differently to the way residential customers are treated and to be talked to about affordability differently. Because for the commercial customers, profit is the most important thing, and that we established through our jobs to be done work research that we launched, where we identified the jobs that had to be done within the residential customer base and jobs to be done within the commercial customer base. And we even segmented further for both the residential and the commercial. For the residential, we segmented further in terms of family size, because family size informed how much you will use to cook. And for the commercial, we segmented through what type of commercial it is, and we identified that there are some commercial customers that our product did not respond to effectively. For example, we don't have the right product yet. Of course, we'll innovate later for big hotels. So we are established segments within the commercial that we serve effectively, right, with the products that we currently have. And we also established jobs to be done within the residential space, which was anchored around safety, and that is what we communicate the most, and full day cooking. And for the commercial customers, it's how does the product enable us to make profit. And we are able now to communicate to our customers this more effectively through our retention calls, through our onboarding calls. We are able to use that messaging so that they can see the value of the product and how it enables their different jobs. The third thing that we did is that we launched a study for meal to meal comparison. This meal to meal comparison was really to be able to establish, if you compare using MGAS and using charcoal, how much more expensive is it per meal? Because our customers, especially the residential, look at what am I going to spend in this cooking session, not the entire cooking day. So, for example, if you're cooking at that time rice and beans, how much would it cost you on MGAS, and how much would that cost you? Sorry, there are people celebrating a birthday. But yeah, how much would that cost you on charcoal? And we compare on meal, and we use that to communicate again on our retention calls, on our onboarding calls. That is how we used to return people to cook who have lapsed. And that was very, very powerful, because suddenly they were able to touch something, they were able to anchor a price on MGAS, which was lost to them at some point. They were not seeing the value of using LPG. And because of all this, what this achieved for us on the next slide is powerful things that I think we're going to discuss them even deeper at another stage. But for us, the MGAS minutes was very clear because it provided that full day cooking for 24 hours, and women were able to plan their day. How much will I do 50 shillings for in a day? And even when I want to boil only beans, meals that would never make it on LPG before, suddenly started making it to LPG. The long boiling, the cooking of the what we call chapati, which is a long processed bread meal in Kenya, that suddenly started to make its way into LPG, and that was powerful for us. I've talked about the meal to meal comparison that anchors our communication. When somebody says, like currently you're using about 30 shillings to cook tea on charcoal, but if you transfer this to LPG, it will cost you only 8 shillings. And we identified that we were the only ones who had that data to be able to tell them how much it cost them on LPG to cook. And that was very, very powerful. I've also spoken a lot about how segmentation and jobs to be done researches helped us to be able to communicate better, to target better, to be able to show the value of cooking with LPG for both our commercial and residential customers. So that is what we did under that particular arm. And of course, we had amazing outcomes. So the MGAS minutes could only work on, we have several types of meters within MGAS. Some of them we call them P4 meters, others we call PX meters. Now, this particular functionality of the MGAS minutes could only work for PX customers, but we are now working to roll it out to every meter that we have under MGAS. So under PX meter, 70% of our PX customers actually tried the MGAS minutes, and it it led to a 52% increase in consumption among them. And again, I talked about 20% of their long boiled meals made it to MGAS, meals that they would never give us in that kitchen, suddenly started making it to MGAS, and that was quite a win for us. On the meal to meal comparison, we started to communicate very clearly how much you save when you use MGAS instead of charcoal. And we started to calculate, to them, when you ask them, how much did you buy this week? What did you cook on it? If you had cooked it with MGAS, this is what you had saved. And for every customer who would do these calculations with, we found that they were actually saving about 3 hours a week if they use LPG, and they were saving more than 300 Kenya shillings, and would actually tell them what it is exactly they would have done with that extra 300 shillings that they would do. You would have paid for your children's school fees. That would translate to this monthly. And that was very, very powerful for retaining our customers and returning them to cook and taking them away from the dirty fuels. Of course, the commercial customer base, we increased it by 20% just by segmenting and discovering there are certain customers that we can target very effectively. And this is exactly what we need to tell them at onboarding for us to be able to target them effectively. And we had a 7% increase in their consumption for the commercial customer base. And remember, our commercial customer base, when we say 7%, it looks small, but it is really, really a lot of gas usage, because the average usage of kg, if the residential customer, in terms of how we measure them, if they use 4 kgs, we have a target that they use 4 kgs per month. But for the commercial customers, they can go up to 30 kgs a month if you are able to translate that very, very clearly to them, the value that they have. So this particular cohort, or the cross-functional team that came together for affordability and accessibility, we really delivered quite powerful results. And that is what even made it a buy-in to continue to expand the MGAS minutes to all meters, to continue and compare meal comparisons and communicate that more to our customers. And we are very excited about what we have done with that. I think I'll hand it to Anita to take us through the second group.
Thank you very much, Kimonya. I might just very quickly jump in. And so, yeah, that was really helpful in terms of just going through all of those outcomes and everything. And just something I wanted to kind of re-emphasize in this section is, so we've referred to it as accessibility and affordability, but actually a couple of slides before, and in the top right, you'll be able to see this on the slide. We have cook, clean, whatever your wallet, and crucially, the customer language. So we have help me understand how much cooking. So this ties directly back to those customer insights we surfaced that in the focus groups, to ensure that this is not being led by the business. This is actually being led by customers' expectations, and that language it remains as a red thread throughout the delivery. This is not just delivering against general things. It's saying, look, actually, this is an expectation with this future state of cook, clean, whatever your wallet in mind. And I think that's really important in terms of that customer centricity that the MGAS team have been pushing through. Okay, brilliant. So over to yourself, Anita.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kamonya. So I'll take the second first expert support, where we're looking at making life easier for our customers. And as Kamonya has mentioned, that really was very important to the customer. So just to give a bit of a very short summary of how the process works, is that we will come to your home with a cylinder and a smart meter mounted on it and install it in your house, and then take you through the process of how you can use it. So you can see there's a whole component of last mile, where there's delivery and us coming right into your house, setting up the system for you. And therefore, very, very important for us from a process perspective to get this operationally right. And what our customers are saying, we need you to make life easier for us by being there on time and actually helping us use the product well, so that we can actually enjoy the clean cooking benefits around that. So one of the things we realized during the study is that our structure in the organization had everybody doing everything. So in the field team, or those who are in the field, they were basically going out and looking for sales for the customers, educating the customers. At the same time, they were then making sure that they install the product in your house. And at the same time, they were making sure that they actually follow up on how is the product, how you're using it. And we realized we're putting a lot around the structure. It wasn't very, very conducive. So one of the first actions that had to be done is we had to get clear roles that separated what you basically call from a growth and a retention perspective. And then you have the other role that's really around maintenance of the solution in our customers' premises. And what this did is that it was able to then give us very, very clear KPIs that we could measure the team on. It gave clarity on your role, whether you are on the growth side or on the retention side, which is basically making sure you follow up with the customer and the usage and understanding how they're getting along with the product. And then also making sure that from an installation and a maintenance side, when you run out of gas, we're there before you run out, and we're able to change your cylinder. We're able to make sure your meter is working right. So this clear role separation and alignment across the whole business did require a whole conversation around how we structure within the operation. It required a HR conversation because it needed to do a lot of changing around structures. It also required a whole finance conversation, a whole marketing conversation, a whole supply chain conversation. So when we talk about everybody getting involved in this particular process, it means that everybody had a part to play within the organization. And hence, executive support, leadership support, and buy-in by your team on the ground really, really was important around that. The second thing we looked at is as we had done the restructure, as we were going through the restructure and seeing how we can get growth separate, how you can get operations separate, how you can have a retention team that's really following the journey of the customer. We said we need to do a centralized pilot. How do we then understand that if with this restructure, it's actually delivering the results? How do we then make changes even as we do the pilot, so that if there are any changes we have to do, any refinement, what's working, what's not working, and what would success look like? So when we did this centralized pilot, even post the restructure, we realized that there was a group of customers who had stopped cooking, and were not very close to why they had stopped cooking. But now with the retention team in place who understand, who are following up on the customer journey, making sure you have a 10-day mark, a 15-day mark, a 30-day mark, and the data within the organization tells you the cooking sessions, are they cooking, have they stopped cooking, is the meter working, did they run out of gas? That whole data was now being put to good use by a centralized team that was able to then track and have a conversation with the customer. And we were able to see that able to give us very good results, and we were able to align and be very agile as we tried to change. The other thing is that we had a challenge around, well, we knew we had a challenge is our ticket closure. I mean, in any organization, it's maybe a ticketing system, how do you know that all the challenges, all the queries that your customers are actually calling in are actually being resolved within a defined turnaround time that is conducive to the customers? And to be honest, we were not doing very, very well around here. Our tickets were taking too long to close, for frustrating the customer and making sure that the customer then looking at the experience we're giving the customer was not the right experience. So we wanted to see with this restructure, with a centralized pilot, with a definite clear separation of roles, and with the data we have, we needed to close tickets faster, because if you're using my product and you're not making life easy for me, if you're not solving my issues quickly or responding to a question I have. So reduction in turnaround time on a ticket closure rate was very, very, very critical. And the last thing we have is it's a system within MGAS. We call it the task engine. In short, a task engine, we have algorithms within our technology system that looks at your consumption, looks at your payment patterns, and is able to then predict with your payments, with your consumption, your 13 kg cylinder should sort of run out by day X. And what this system has for us is have a task engine that it takes you up to 10 days. So from 10 days, it starts counting down. You have 10 days to cook, 9, 8, 7, up to 0. The ideal situation is should never get to 0, because we are giving you a promise that by the time you get to 0, a technician will have called you up, arranged a time to come to your house and actually change your cylinder in time. So this task engine there's a lot of rejigging the process, understanding the availability, how do you inbuilt a scheduling engine. Maybe it runs out, but you're not available in the morning. How can you put detail in the task engine that you're available in the evening? It could tell us you're away for a time, you're not going to be around for 1 week. So then the task engine will not be able to calculate consumption. It's actually the heart of the technology we use. So just rejuvenating, rejigging the system with the information we got, we're then able to sort of create logic that was making life easier for the customer. And really, the end goal was you should never run out of gas if you have an M-gas product. So just the next slide, Matt. So what happened? Just to re-emphasize, the roles restructure was critical. It gave us clear roles of separation. It gave us clear roles of alignment. It made sure that everybody in the teams understood what they needed to deliver. People were very clear on the performance metrics. And you see, if you're very clear, you have clarity around your performance metrics, then you know what you're being measured on. And it's easy to also make sure that people have a better job satisfaction around what they're doing. And we all know with the customer experience, if your people engagement goes up because you're doing the right thing, they're clear on their deliverables, and they're getting the right recognition around that, then obviously the customer experience is a reflection of how you treat your people within the organization. The retention pilot I've told you about is post the restructure will then be very, very easy to understand the kind of consumption our customers were having. So we realized that out of the pilot, 38% of our customers were not cooking. And post the pilot, with the things we put in place, we reduced that 38% of those people who had stopped cooking down to 26%. So the margin may not look large enough, but when you look at the 38% improved down to a 26% improvement, clearly means that there is some right things we're doing. And then we keep on reviewing the pilot and understanding from the insights we get from them. Being close to the customer journey is going to also help us go further in terms of coming with innovative products, trying to see how we can get better from an operations perspective, from a technologies perspective. Our TAT was also, as I said, a big one. I think our closure rate was something less than 50%. Actually, it was very low. We were only closing about 46% of the tickets that our customers had actually logged with us. And with this process, with this focus that we put on, with the team helping us, we actually moved that from about 46% to close to 95% of our tickets being closed within the required timelines that we've given our customers. That was huge. And what that does for us is, number one, you have less complaints coming through. You have people within the organization believing that this can be done. You have the customers then becoming your advocates because they could see the improvement around turnaround time. And it just makes it easier to spread the news about how this product works, but more important, how we want to impact and transform lives by giving them a clean cooking solution. And last but not least is the task engine that I've talked about, where with specific improvements, specific iterations, we're getting better and better in our prioritization logic. Kamonya talked about our commercial customers. We have residential customers. Was getting better to ensure that we get to talk to you, we get to serve you, we get to support any challenge you may have before you call us. So it means that we are more proactive, we seem to be more closer to you, and that just makes it easier for any customer. When I know that you're closer to me, you understand me, and you're going to talk to me before I pick the phone, it just makes conversation much, much easier. And actually, customers are more forgiving when once in a while you may have a challenge, as we all know, and the loyalty coming and people believing that you'll actually keep the promise. They're actually also less forgiving when sometimes it does go wrong, as you all know, in the kind of various businesses that you do. Next slide, Matt.
And sorry, I should have put the build up. I think you've covered most of these.
Yes. I think I've covered all this, so I won't repeat that. So we do have various metrics, as you know, from a customer experience. I mean, people can talk about Net Promoter Score. We have the CSAT score. We have CS. We have all these sort of standard and other new ways of measuring things coming up. But what we did is one of the things we wanted to work around was around the culture and the people, because the issue was, is it that we are not able to reward those who are doing a fantastic job? Because as I mentioned, a lot of our field team are in our customers' homes, and what they're doing in the customers' homes really, really is critical in terms of brand and also awareness and how they educate. So we introduced a very short questionnaire or telephone survey that was basically admitted immediately had an interaction with the customer. And this was just to focus on how many times the customer had to call before we showed up, how much effort did you put in, and really what was your overall satisfaction around that. And that was very, very interesting. We reached about 10,000 customers in that cycle. And 40% of the customers gave us feedback that I've had to call 2 or more times to get service. And then we said, okay, even if we do a proper restructure, we put the right roles, we have the right logic, we have a proper retention team who are following up and chasing on the customer. How do we get the team on the ground, the field staff, every employee to understand that if a customer is calling 2 or more times, that's just not on? What can we do? So we incorporated it as part of the appraisal process for any customer-facing team. And we also had a back-end appraisal in terms for internal teams that support the front-end teams. Because people always look at the front-end team and wonder if you're delivering excellent service, then nothing is wrong and everybody's clapping your hands. But sometimes when the service goes wrong, it's not necessarily the front-facing customer-facing employee that's not got it right. It's a whole chain of people supporting that team. So we introduced an appraisal process that covered everybody in the organization. The front office team had specific KPIs around language, around how you show up, and education. The back office team had KPIs around your SLA. How long do you take? How do you even interact with individual team members within there? And what gets measured actually gets done. So we realized that that was really, really a good thing that came out of this structure, where now we're then able to really hold everybody accountable from an operations perspective, but also from a value-based perspective on how you show up within the organization as you deal with internal colleagues or internal customers, and how that then feeds out to the external customers. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Anita. Very, very detailed and really, really interesting. And I hope lots of people in the who've dialed in got a lot from that. I do see that we're getting lots of questions. I think we're up to about 15, 16 messages in the chat. So very aware we want to go through those. So I will just touch on this very briefly. One thing I will add, I've got to say across the whole project, the period of time we've worked with MGAS, is it was genuinely amazing to see how they brought people together who had never spoken to each other before, who didn't know each other, working in different functions, but crucially working on those two priorities, those two very specific areas that were written in the language of how customers in the focus groups expressed it. So it's in their words. So there's absolute clarity on the customer expectations. And I did mention this right at the start, but I do want to reinforce that I think the art or the secret to what MGAS have done and achieved is really this idea of the measurement loop. So identifying what to focus on, and then being really, really clear on what they are measuring. And Kamanya and Anita did a fantastic job, I believe, of taking us through exactly what they've measured, how those metrics have moved. We really appreciate the openness to share that. But I think, yeah, it's great to identify expectations and areas to change, but it's even better to then measure and I would say build excitement internally as to are we doing enough to move the needle on the things we hoped we would move. And so that's why we really wanted to go to that level of detail of the actual initiatives and how they've moved and to celebrate those movements. Okay, so I mentioned up front that we have a customer experience toolkit. So I want you to think of this as a workbook. This is something that everybody will be able to download. And the idea here is the MGAS project. This was quite a lot of work, and it took quite a few months. However, there's a lot of learnings and a lot that we can take from that can be distilled into a workbook or a toolkit. Now, both Kamanya and Anita made the point that actually one of the most foundational aspects was getting cross-team involvement, cross-functional involvement. So whilst the toolkit is fantastic, I don't think it replaces the need to have this cross-functional working, because it's very difficult for one function to own this and to do much. It's so important that others are kind of bought into it. So what we will do is I will just give you a little flavor of the toolkit, and then my colleague Catherine will put a link to the toolkit in the chat. It's been designed to be self-serve, so it should be very self-explanatory. But if you have any questions, you've got any issues, let's say next week, then please do reach out to us and we'll help you as much as we can. So yeah, the toolkit goes into a little bit more detail than the journey we described to you. So we have listen, focus, fix, check, and repeat. And fundamentally, this is about listening to what your customers expect. So this does involve conversations with customers. We can't get away from that. Once we have a degree of understanding of those expectations, we will then, as an organization, make decisions, and we will choose to focus on a number of those. And then crucially, we will decide, right, we are going to fix these. We will check we've now done enough to fix them, and then we will measure and think of it as more of a loop. So even though this is created and it looks visually linear, I want you to imagine it as a loop. So I'll just give you an example of the book. So it's structured. This is the second page to explain what I've just voiced over there, who it's for, and kind of how you go about it. And then essentially you have first page is about listen, and you have an editable box. So you can download it. You can click into the patterns you found box once you've spoken to some customers. You can't do that until you've spoken to some customers. And then you can complete it, you can share it with colleagues, and hopefully you can get a team of people internally to kind of work on this and kind of get excitement, build excitement around it. And here's just a screenshot of focus, but conscious of time, so I don't want to kind of go into too much detail on these. So yeah, so I think that's probably everything I wanted to say in terms of the presentation. I'm conscious we've got lots of questions, so I probably prefer to get to them rather than this is actually just the final slide, but we can maybe touch on that at the end. So what I might do is I might just stop sharing. And then I think we can go to the questions. So we've got 21. Right. Let me just pick up the first one. So question from Indrapal Pamar. I'm particularly interested in how pay-as-you-go LPG and smart meter data can support credible baseline determination, fuel stacking assessment, usage monitoring, and verification. And that's a very relevant example. Okay, so I think the way to do this is if Anita and Kamanya, if you guys can go off mute, and then if these are questions, if these are things that we can address on the call, then fantastic. So if this is something that the two of you are able to address, and if not, then let's just file these away. We will put them in a document, and we will think about how to address these, because some of these might be quite technical. So yeah, let me just go through. So yeah, I'll just read that one out, and if that's something that Anita or come on, you can say anything against, and if not, that's fine, we can move on. So I'm particularly interested in how pay-as-you-go LPG and smart meter data can support credible baseline determination, fuel stacking assessment, usage monitoring and verification under methodologies such as Vera, gold standard metered cooking approaches, and emerging Article 6 frameworks. And okay, I think he's actually this person's just saying, he or she is just saying they'd like to connect with practitioners. Okay, so I don't think that's, sorry, I don't think that's actually a question. Next question is from Sheffield. How do you communicate with your customers by mobile phone message, call, or printed paper?
So it's mostly, I'll take that one. We do mobile phone and text messages. Mostly text messages is how we communicate with our customers.
Brilliant, thank you. Next one is it's just a really positive message from Elizabeth. So thank you, Elizabeth. MGAS minutes will be a game changer when rolled out fully, even more affordable than a regular cylinder. Excellent news. Thank you, Elizabeth. That's great to see. Okay, next question. When pay-as-you-go affordability enables customers to cook more frequently, how would MGAS distinguish genuine charcoal displacement from increased cooking caused by suppressed demand or rebound effects?
So I think Amonya's dropped off. That's really an insights question. Is she back on?
Oh, okay. It's come on, yeah. No longer there.
She could have.
Yeah. Looks
But
like
what
no
they do,
comments there.
she's back?
Yes, yes. Hey, Kimonya, I think I can see it there.
Amonya, thank
Yes,
you.
yes. So the question, sorry, just read it to me again. I was
When
jotting it
pay-as-you-go
down.
affordability enables customers to cook more frequently, how would MGAS distinguish genuine charcoal displacement from increased cooking caused by suppressed demand or rebound effects?
Good question. The way that we measure this in MGAS is we want to know meal per meal. We want to know what actual meals go on charcoal and what actual meals come to MGAS. So it's not we don't take it as a grouped replacement, like a household replacement. We understand very well that there are meals that don't make it to LPG in general and don't make it to MGAS. So we do meal per meal and transfer meal per meal. So for example, the mix of beans and maize very rarely makes it to LPG. So once you are able to transfer that in a household and show them how much they will not spend as much as they do in charcoal, that is what we present as a win, not it as an entirety. I don't know if I answered the question.
Well, I think question to the person who asked the question, could you just indicate if that answers your question? Maybe just a thumbs up if that addresses your question. I'm conscious how many questions there are, so try and get us through as many as I can. Okay, another question about minutes. So what model was followed before the introduction of minutes? Was it a monthly subscription? And also by PX customer, is this a customer category? Please, could you elaborate?
Okay. Let me elaborate on that as well. So PX is a type of meter. We have two types of meters. The PX is a newer one, more digital one. The P4 is what we introduced the market in. So it's just a type of meter. We're in the process of replacing all. But also in the meantime, it will take a long time. So we want to introduce the minutes into all the meters. So it's not a category of customer, it's more a product, a different
It's a generation. It's a generation of your product, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And what was in place before minutes? That's the other question, the other part of that.
What was what?
What was in place before minutes? What model was followed before the introduction of minutes?
Just regular purchase, like the same way you would purchase a prepaid airtime, say, or prepaid electricity tokens. So it was just prepaid cash. There was no product before, just regular prepayments.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Another question. Do you periodically cross-check smart meter consumption against household surveys, cooking practices type measurement to confirm how much charcoal or firewood customers continue using alongside LPG? So I guess that's a question for you, Kamonya. Is that something that you do? Don't worry if you don't know. That's fine. We can move on. Okay, I'll let you think about that one. Okay, Anita, question for you. One question related to when cylinders or smart meters are exchanged between customers. How do you maintain continuous customer level traceability and prevent gaps or double counting in the consumption database?
All cylinders and meters have a unique serial number. We use a scanning process that integrates with our systems, and we're able to track movement, replacements. And it's really the identifier using the scanner, the sequence numbers.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, next message is from Dan. Partnering with MGAS in Cleaner Africa, University of Liverpool, you completed a randomized control test of an LPG pressure cooker with Tanzanian MGAS customers. We used SUMs, which are stove use monitors. We used some technology for charcoal stoves and documented a significant reduction in stacking. Oh, wow, that's really interesting. 47 minutes per day reduction in use of charcoal use, addressing the barrier of long duration foods for pay-as-you-go LPG. Results being impressive. Thanks a lot for sharing that, Dan. That's really interesting, and I'm sure many people will find that interesting and look forward to learning and reading more about that. Kenneth Leonard question. What is the business aspects? So I need a bit more information. Not sure what that means, but let's move on to the next one. What does from Tebby, what does customer onboarding look like in detail? What about follow-up communication from MGAS? So that's essentially quite a detailed question. I might just kind of continue through the questions just to make sure people keep adding them as well. So um, okay, here's one. Here's maybe a bit more of a focused one. So when a customer stops consuming LPG, do you record whether they return to charcoal, faced an affordability constraint, experienced a technical fault to temporarily stop cooking? That classification could materially affect both customer retention decisions and carbon credit monitoring.
Yeah, that's why the centralized retention team really came in
Yeah.
handy because we look at the lifespan usage and have a call with you. And the various reasons. It could be income dwindling. It could be you've traveled. It could be a problem with the product. So we stack up all those reasons and have a detailed iteration around it, and then see what needs to be done based on what we can do or what is external. So a whole host of things happen, but the retention team is able to give you all that information when consumption drops.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anita. I hope that answers your question. Person who asked that. Next one is an introduction from Aaron, so people can look at that if they want to. Just want to get through all the questions if I can. Question from Indira. Indira from Nepal. As regard to customer dropout from using the gas, do they fall back on charcoal? What is the percentage dropout and what are the main reasons for their dropout? That wasn't necessarily central to the study. I don't know if that's something did we collect that? Is that something that Kimon or Anita you're aware of, you can speak to?
No, not Matt, but it's separate, other separate teams, a separate study, but not this particular one we're involved in.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Then we have a question about carbon methodologies. Now we've got some minutes. I might just move on from that one to deal with that. I just want to make sure I cover everything. How do you deal or answer clients who complain on the gas depleting fast?
Okay, I mean, we have a whole technology team, meter engineering team. So customers can call in, hey, I think my gas is going too fast, and the team looks at it. And sometimes it could be a malfunction with the meter, which they're able to move out. Sometimes you left your gas on and you weren't aware. So we're able to see the flow and all these other specifications around gas flow and come back to you and say, hey, yeah, meter fault function, nope, you left the gas on, etc. And we're able to then reduce. If indeed the gas has flowed much fast, we'll give you back your money. If not, we'll explain to you how the cooking sessions are and the gas flow, and you'll be able to understand why you think, to help you understand how you can manage your cooking sessions better. So we do have all those kind of problems or indications, and we get back to you with a proper answer.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nita. Okay, so the questions are coming thick and fast, so I'm trying to do my best. Thomas wants to know whether the cylinders and smart meters are leased to the customers or if M-Gas has 100% ownership of the cylinder or cylinder/smart meter.
100% ownership by MGAS.
Fine. Thank you. We've got another question about replacement of charcoal, which I think we've covered. Trying to find new questions as opposed to other ones. Brilliant. We have one on the customer effort score. It's more of a research question around it. So how do you, since it's collected shortly after a service interaction, how do you address selection bias from customers who never contact support? And then a question around the validation of the representative sample. So is that something that either of you can speak to?
Yeah, so the centralized comfort effort score is just one aspect of how we get data, but we have all these other functions. When a customer calls, even just for education, we'll do a survey. Whatever a field agent goes into a customer's home, we'll have a rough survey. So with all these different NPS, all the random surveys. So you look at all of this in totality and try and build a story around what could be done or what could be the insights coming from the customer. So it's not it's not one thing, but it's a whole collection of other surveys, other focus groups, other interactions that help us get to a place where we can understand what the issue is.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Anita. That's really helpful to kind of clear up the context, because it's interesting when we only touched on the one metric, or we touched on a few, but actually knowing it's one of so many others. I think you put it into perspective as to how it can help. All right, brilliant. So there are a few other questions, but I think some of them are a bit more technical. And what we will do is we will have a copy of the chat. So we will just compile, we'll put all of the questions together, and we can go back to people with the questions that we can answer, because everybody has dialed into the call, so we'll be able to share that after the call if that's something we can kind of complete. What I will do is just draw your attention to Catherine, who has shared the toolkit link, and I've just put an emoji thing against it, so you'll be able to see that. And other than that, it's 59 minutes past, so I think that's pretty much us done. So I hope everybody has got something from the call. You've enjoyed it, you've learned a lot, and yeah, I think that's it from us. So thank you for dialing in. Thank you for being part of the webinar, and best of luck with the toolkit. And a huge thank you to Anita and to Kamonya for taking us through in so much detail everything that you've done and achieved. And I think just being so transparent about it, and that's massively appreciated from the Clean Cooking Alliance. And I'm sure from everyone else on this call who, well, we've got so many questions. That tells me lots of people are listening, which is great. So thank you, everyone. Brilliant. We'll leave it there.